But even this morning, it was like going, no, you've got it. Regardless, maybe I didn't get my full 30 in, but I got my 23 and I was like, hey, I got to get moving. But making that a priority, or even, going on vacation or traveling, I still try to make sure I'm getting something in, because that's the only way I'm going to combat a lot of these other things we're faced with.
Well, that's the other side of it, right? You're going to make yourself better prepared to handle all the crap that we're talking about, right? Instead of just being engulfed in it and getting stuck in the weeds and not having any moments, you're worse apt to handle everything. If you don't have the rests, if you don't get the mental breaks, if you don't get the physical breaks, if you don't do the things that you need to do, it's so much harder to dig out of that. And you feel like,
hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Empower and Elevate with me, your host, Mark Thomas. Today, we have a seasoned professional with 20 years of technology experience. He leads Taylor Business Group in fostering relationships within the IT channel for mutual benefit. From managing MSPs to creating communities, he is committed to positive outcomes. He thrives on solving problems and making the channel a better place for everyone. Please welcome Ken Patterson.
I'm here.
We blocked 2 hours for these because most of our episodes are 50 minutes to an hour and a half. Doesn't mean they have to be, but they can be. It depends on the conversation and where we go with it.
Right.
We have times that we run into technical issues. So we're trying to sort them and get going.
Right.
And it could just, add to kind of all that. So the time frame. So I don't want to, I know a lot of times maybe I had him one yesterday or set Tuesday. He's like, are we really going to be here for 2 hours? He's like, I can't do anything for 2 hours. You'll be, I'm like, you're a talker. You'll be fine regardless. Right. But,
hey, I sat for 6 for my tattoo. I sat for 10 for my first tattoo.
That's a long time.
That's a long time. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And how long ago was when was the first and how long ago was the second?
The 10-hour one was about 5 years ago. It was a cover up. I was covering up a really old one. And it was actually 8 hours total, but it was 10 the first time and then 8 the second time. And the lady was like, wow, you're crazy. And I'm like, no, I just don't want to come back. Let's finish this. Get this done. Just get it done. And then the latest one was just a couple weeks ago. I just did another cover up. And the first part was 6 hours and the second part was 3 hours. And actually this guy did as much work, but better in less time, which just goes to show you get what you pay for. And sometimes they'll even be more efficient, and kind of ties into our little MSP world. And we talk about people, selling their services for $25 an endpoint and things like that. It's like, yeah, but what are you getting for that? $25 an endpoint. And, when you pay for somebody's skill set, the outcomes are a lot better and a lot cleaner. And this thing, he did it, and 3 days later it was healed. Whereas usually it takes a much longer time. It's peeling. It's all raised up. It's sore. This guy, just much better, much more of an artist, much cleaner. I mean, here you go. I'll show you.
Dang, look at all that ink. Goodness.
Yeah.
Dude, that is intense. That's mean looking.
And that guy, like I said, I'm fresh off the second half, the 3-hour one from last Friday. And it's clean. So it just shows you the type that, these guys are artists. I don't know how they do it with all the ink spraying everywhere and, but that's the outcome right there.
Amazing. No, I mean, you're right. We always talk about you pay for or get what you pay for, right? And it's fair to say, well, like, what are you really getting? And, with clients, right? How many of those, like, they don't understand what they're getting. So it makes it hard for them to compare because they think that, the second suitor has something else better, he's just cheaper, right? They go to that price thing. I know I recently sent a proposal over to a prospect and they went silent afterwards. Why? Because I knew the price. I knew the price was going to, hey, if they're not willing to commit to doing things right, I'm not interested in engaging that relationship.
Right.
And I could tell just by what they were saying, because they came to us because they were looking to replace their current provider, or their current provider doesn't want to touch certain things because of security risk. right? So they're out shopping because they know that they won't do these things, and they're like, we're not going to do them either, right? We're going to do this, and actually, you're going to have more than what you have today. So that comes with a price tag, and
right, 100%. Yep, and that's the other side, the liability side that a lot of MSPs aren't even paying attention to.
Well, it's hard. I mean, we know it's out there, and it's gonna bite us sooner or later.
It's coming sooner, at least for the DoD stuff is coming 2025. So any way, shape, or form you're tied to DoD, you bet if you're not lined up, which it takes a long time to get lined up from a security standpoint. You're going to be out basically.
And this prospect does DoD work.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So they already are on the CMMC roadmap in a sense, right? But just based off, we did a galactic scan for them, right, as part of our prospecting there, and I'm pointing out all these things, and it's like going, you guys aren't doing any. I mean, first off, the fact that I ran the scan without any problems. Second off, this is all the information we're seeing. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a scary world out there, and it's all going to change. And, it's funny that people don't think about the DoD prospects that you might have, and you have to be willing to say, okay, well, I'm not going to have those people as clients. Right. But, what if you have a paving company that's been your meal ticket for a long time, big paving company, they pay you well, you do all their IT stuff, and they land a contract to do Hanscom Air Force Base's runways. Guess what? They just became a DoD client, and you can't support them if you're not ready, if you haven't followed the track and gotten to a certain level and all that stuff. So people have to think about it and just understand. And it's okay to not want that work, but you got to remember some of your existing customers could slide into it under that DoD column, and that changes everything.
Definitely. Yeah, it's something that we need to pay attention to. And you're saying obviously it's coming sooner than later, so we need to gear up, be ready, and change that mindset of
honestly, and it's also a very large opportunity for the MSPs that want to take a shot at it, because because of how long it takes and how much money it costs to get to that level, that certification level. There's not enough MSPs doing it. There's going to be thousands of companies that are going to need this work, and there's only going to be a handful of MSPs that can do it. So either you connect with an MSP that's already got those certifications and use them as that arm, but there's only so many they're going to be able to do. There's going to be a lot of work just sitting there and money to be made if MSPs are willing to make the investment in time and money, because the people I know that are doing it, they look like their heads are going to explode because they're taking on so much work, and it's a lot, but they also understand on the other side of this, there's going to be so much work that they're going to have to turn stuff down. So, it's like anything else, right? You got to invest the time and money into it to get what you want out of it. And it's going to be very busy and very crazy. I just don't know how it's all going to work, because if you only have, say, 30 MSPs that get this full blown, go down this CMMC track and get this, all the things they need to do to be ready for this 2025 change, what happens if we don't have enough MSPs to handle it? And how, what's the government going to do? They're saying they're not going to roll back. No one's planning on a rollback or any type of extension. So if that happens, the work's just not going to get done. And then these companies are not going to be, not going to have access to that type of work, right? They're not going to have an MSP that can help them. So I don't know. It's a very daunting situation when you think about it. Like, holy crap, what's going to happen in 2025 when all this hits the fan?
Yeah, definitely. And I don't think that I have spent nearly enough time, obviously, thinking about that. I know that we talk about the FTC and their ruling change or additional safeguard rules, and we're not seeing much of anything out of that as far as noise wise. So people, oh yeah, we need to do these things, but without the enforcement, we're going to get away with what they can, right? I mean, and to do that right, obviously, comes at expense as well.
Right. To do anything right comes with an expense. Yeah. You're going to always need to spend some money to make money, and you're going to have to spend money to get your business where it needs to go. I mean, we know there's a lot of MSPs out there that, don't do any of that. And they're the ones that we always talk about, right? You hang a shingle, you call yourself an MSP, but you're not doing any of the work. And that's going to go away when these type of restrictions start to hit us, whether it's the DoD stuff or when we finally smarten up and get to a level of saying, hey, what's your operational maturity? What level are you at to call yourself an MSP, right? And be able to have understand those levels. Because right now, MSP covers a pretty wide range of IT fixers, right? It's all the way, anybody that can fix a computer to the high-end security guys are calling themselves MSPs, or then we have the MSSP, but there's no guideline. There's no actual measurement that says, what level are you? We started to say security first MSP, which was nice, but anybody could say that. What proves that you're a security first MSP?
Right.
Yeah. Right. So those are the things that kind of make it a little bit more difficult, right? Our space is just kind of like the Wild West when we talk about, what people can do and how much they can do. And you're competing with people down the street that want to charge, $10 a workstation. And, the client is saying to you, well, I can get the same thing over here. And it's like, it's not the same thing. We need to find a way to discuss that. How do we differentiate what's the same thing? Because sure, they talk about tech, we talk about tech, but what are they actually doing? What are they doing to keep your business safe? What are they doing to ensure that if something happens, what are they doing if something happens? Because we know it's only a matter of when with all this stuff and how it's happening. All the things that kind of fill that gap in between, I'm an IT guy and I'm an MSP.
Mm-hmm. No. Yeah. And we've seen it, right? Obviously, this industry was such a low cost to enter into the industry, right? I mean, what does it take, right? Anybody can say, oh, yeah, I'm doing this thing, right? So we're competing with that. And I mentioned the prospect. The prospect was saying, hey, well, we have their stack. Okay. We all have a stack. What's in it, right? What's it doing for you?
Right.
They seem so like we got the stack. We got their stack. Okay, great.
Yep. I think one of the ways that you can differentiate is, and I say this a lot without saying, hey, these guys are awful, right? Because you don't want to be that negative force out there, right? Because there are people that are starting out new that are actually want to learn and want to grow and, are doing the right things, but there's just too many of the ones that aren't following any type of guidelines for any part of their business, right? They're not doing benchmarks for their financials. They're not doing, the whole thing, internally, externally, it's just, they're not following any guideline. They're just trying to sell stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And we have to figure those ones out as well. And the way I found works really well is to actually do check boxes, right? Create a checklist of the things that as an MSP you do for a business and why. And then just say, hey, look, my old approach was, hey, Mark, look, I only care about the community being protected. How you do it is fine with me. I don't need you to come to me as long as the people that you're working with are doing the right things. Right now, it's not about me. It's about our community and how we're protecting it. Then you give them the checklist and make sure it's thorough because as well as I do, there are questions on there about PSA, about their RMM tool, about incidents and things like that they're going to go, oh, my people don't talk to me about this. My people don't, right? So make that checklist aimed at the things that you do really well, that there are a lot of immature MSPs out there doing that you can, value instead of price, right? That's the best way to do it is obviously, when I talk to people too, it seems like it's always price. Hey, it's this price thing, it's price. I can't match their price. We got to get away from that. We got to start talking about value.
Right.
Where's the value? And why are we not talking more like doctors do? Why are we not being more prescriptive? That's the piece that we're missing, folks like Matt Lee and Paul Redding out in the space, those guys talk about this, but I don't think enough people are listening. My doctor doesn't come to me and, my doctor comes to me and says, hey, you got high blood pressure, you're overweight, you got diabetes, and, shows me my pills. And I don't go, I just want the white one. Right. So why do MSPs let their customers do that to us, right? It's because we were always born to just take the sale, take the money. We need it. We need the customers. And we got to break away from that. We got to start to be more prescriptive and explain like a doctor. Here's what's wrong. with your business, which by the way is the second most important thing other than their health, right? Because it feeds their family. It does. So it's the same idea. I said idea. The same idea as a doctor. We can do a scan and we can tell them what's wrong with their network and how to fix it. And here's your prescriptive. This has nothing to do with tech talk. This says these are the things that we're going to do to fix your business. Here's your business problems. These are your business outcomes. This is how we're going to fix you. And when you can do that coupled with doing some other things that are not technical, one thing that I started to do was every time I found a way to fix my business internally, I would show my customers how to do that same thing. Traction, anything that I was doing, I would talk to my customers about that and they would be like, wait a minute, this has nothing to do with technology. No, I want to help you, right? And if I help them be better businesses and they grew, that helped me.
Sure.
So it's not like it's not helping. So doing things that are not all about the tech and helping them be better, first of all, it makes you a hell of a lot more sticky because now you're an advisor to them. You're not just some tech guy or girl out there fixing their tech stuff. You are showing them how to be better in their business. So if you can find ways that you're learning and working on your business to do that with the business owners you work with as your customers, it only makes that relationship that much more stronger. And if you make them better and they're not going out of business because of something crazy and they've actually found a way to double and triple their business, well, when that happens, who do they need for technology? Well, of course, it's you. So taking that business approach and that prescriptive approach works light years ahead of just going at it and trying to sell. And you know how that model works out, right? Then you end up with 10, 12 really bad customers that you can't get rid of. Your culture gets crushed, and culture is everything in your business.
Yes.
Your culture, your people have to believe and row in the same direction you are. So yeah, it's been a little while since I was, actually running an MSP, and I just keep coming up with these new ideas. And I always say to myself, maybe I'll go back and do it. And then I think about all the security crap that you guys got to do. Maybe I'll stay over here and just help, right?
Well, because it's a total different game, right?
Yeah,
it's right.
right.
I mean, there's so much more involved, and it is only getting more complex and more things we have to do. And let alone talk about this, all the change with the vendors we deal with and the things that they're implementing. It becomes a lot.
There you go. And Mark, you just hit it on the head. The other part of this is most MSPs like to complain about the vendors, right? And it's so funny because it's this trickle effect. So we, as MSPs, we complain about our customers and we complain about the vendors, the two people we rely on the most, right?
Sure.
And we complain. But what are we actually doing as MSPs to fix that? Well, the first one is what I said: be more prescriptive, make the connections with your customers and show value, and they'll do more, they'll buy more, and it'll be more natural. You're not trying to push a sale. But for those same reasons, why do you act like your vendors are supposed to kiss your butt and fall all over you for your little bit of business? You got to help. It's a 50-50 relationship. Mm-hmm. Be a part of their pack. And if you're a part of their pack and you're giving them stuff and they're not doing anything with it, then you have a legitimate gripe if they're not doing that. But I got to be honest. Lately, I've been seeing vendors doing more with their packs than ever before. Really? The people who are on those advisory boards are bringing back feedback, real feedback, and the vendors do seem to be more open to the change that's coming right from the MSPs. So be a part of that change. Don't sit and complain. If your vendor's not doing what they're supposed to do, first of all, don't go right to social media and start blasting off. That's the worst thing you can do. And remember, I was at PAX 8 dealing with that very thing where people would just go out to social. And then I got to be honest, Mark, 98% of the time, it was the MSP, not PAX 8. It was the weirdest thing. Now, there are those times where it would be some stupid PAX 8 thing, but PAX 8 would step up and fix it, right? Okay. So how is that a problem? And I say that there's a lot of vendors doing that now because nobody's perfect. Everybody's going to have problems. So why are you going to go right to social media the minute that something bad happens? That's the part that I don't like. It's like, and I actually made one of my members, I said this to one of my members. I said, Mark, go to the kitchen table, grab a tube of toothpaste and squirt it all over the table, and then try getting that toothpaste back into the tube. That's what typing on social media is like. Yeah. You can't take it back. It doesn't matter what you do. It's out there. Whether you delete it, there's no way to fix it. So why would you do that much damage right out of the gate before you've talked to someone from the company or tried to push for help inside there? And I get it. If you've gone everywhere all the way up to the CEO and you're getting blown off, sure, go to social media and tell your story. I get that. But that's not what's happening most of the time. Most of the time, MSPs get angry and they just start typing away and boom, and it's out there. And when I talk to them, they would say, yeah, man, I'm sorry, I was having a bad day. I'm like, yeah, but your bad day just basically compounded and went out into the world and made a whole bunch of other bad days. And by the way, whether that was a real problem or not, somebody who was just starting out and was looking at Pax8 to maybe try to use them might have not made that decision because of your bad remark on them that wasn't really meant to do that. What you say, and it's not what it meant to do, but it did that. It has that effect. Right. And that's for all vendors. I'm just telling you my experience with doing this was if you have champions out in the space like Pax8 now, you don't think Rob Ray responds to every post every time someone posts, Rob Ray says, hey, man, let's connect and talk about this. You have somebody. Reach out to the Rob Rays. Reach out to Tracy Arisco at Huntress or Becky Teal at Huntress. Reach out to Shane at ThreatLocker. Right? Every one of these companies, Larry Metter at Infima, like there's all these companies. I could go on and on. I have the Super Ops hat behind me, Juan and Nancy at Super Ops. There are champions at almost every one of these vendors. Go to them first. You don't need to go to social and cause this negative romping. And that's what happens. You say it, then someone else says it. Then there's the people that out there that's what they live for. They jump on and start saying bad things. That's the one thing we really need to stop, Mark, is the negativity.
Well, that negativity, and not just we talk about the vendor aspect, but let's talk about life in general.
Right.
Everything we're touching to. I mean, there's so much negativity. So, and we're in this thing now where everyone goes. First thing you do, go to social media. It doesn't matter if they're on an airline, right, and have a delay or whatever it is. No matter what restaurant, instantly people. And we had a recent experience. I think it was last week, if I remember correctly. We use obviously a CSAT mechanism with our tickets when they're completed, and we had one come back as so. Instantly, it's like picking a phone. Like, wait a second, this is coming from a client that has never given us anything in 2 years, but today gives us a so.
Right.
To pick a phone, hey, what's going on? You having a bad day? Well, customer is this, customer is that, employees this. I'm like, yeah, it sounds horrendous, right? Like, what did we do? Right? Really it was, and then it's, that kind of aspect is going, hey, I want the feedback, but if you have an issue, call me, right? Happy to talk through with you. When you hit that instantly went to our website and now dropped our score, shows it, you don't know who's going to see that next, right? Like going, and hey, if we deserve it, we deserve it, right? At least get the opportunity to talk about it. Well, we want that feedback.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, I had no idea. Can I take it back? Well, it's not about the take back. Let's fix the problem. The problem is, looks like there was some communication, misunderstanding, whatever. We can fix that. We'll walk you through what we did. But yeah, if we instantly lash out through social or put those things out there, it's out there, right?
And you know what? It ties into, so from a vendor perspective, if you're an MSP out there, what you should be doing is trying to find ways to make those vendors better. They're your partner. They're working on stuff that directly relates to what you're doing for your customers, right? So have the same respect you don't like it when your customers do it to you, but then you go and do it to your vendor, right? It doesn't make sense. So I've been saying this a lot lately too. If you haven't talked to a vendor, even in 3 months, go talk to them. Have a conversation. It doesn't mean you're going to buy their solution, but damn, if you don't know what they're doing now, you could miss out on something very good. So, people always say vendors, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Do I think you should change your stack out all the time? No. Do I think you should change your stack over price? No. But there is so much changing out in the world, and there's so many things that are going on, and you should be taking the time to hear out every vendor that is relevant to what you do. And if you haven't talked to them in 3 months, go have a conversation. Why are people so afraid of conversation, Mark? I mean, it doesn't make sense to me that people are getting nervous about stopping and talking to a vendor. Listen, if I walk up to a booth as an MSP and they immediately pitch me, I'm like, you can say thanks, have a nice day. That's okay. but that's not happening all the time. And if you walk up to a booth, how do you know that you don't have a conversation with someone at that booth that turns out to be your next employee or your next employer? Like, whatever.
It's very true. The relationship aspect.
Right. Make relationships and connections, because you never know. Shit, that person could be your next liver donor. I mean, you just don't know, right?
It's
make
true.
connections with people. And by the way, you don't have to make connections with people you don't connect with. That's fine. But I mean, you don't know. You could hit it off with someone and become best friends. You could hit it off with somebody and, you know, they know someone that can connect you up with something that you need down the line. And again, it's not about what you need, but I'm just saying, don't pass up on opportunities to meet great people and know great people. I talked to the competition at every company I was ever at, including my MSP. And people used to think I was crazy because, remember, back in the day, it was that castle mentality. I can't give up my secret sauce, or they're going to steal my stuff. And it's like, no. What we call it nowadays, and Bob Coppedge coined the phrase, it's co-opetition. It's not competition. You know, it's we're friendly. We help each other. There's plenty of business to go around, and we should be connecting with the vendors especially, and also other MSPs. When you go to an event, you should be meeting other MSPs. You should put it on a plan. You should write a plan anytime you go to an event, by the way. You know what happens when we go to an event. You end up over here, you end up over there. You're at a bar somewhere over here, and that's all cool if you have a plan. But you should always write a plan going to an event. I plan to meet 10 new MSPs. I plan to meet 10 new vendors. I have a list that I write out, and I basically know if I hit these things, all the rest of the stuff is gravy. I'm going to be okay. And I've made some great connections over the years. People always talk to me about, oh, you know everybody. Well, yeah, because I took the time to do it. I stopped at a conversation, had a conversation with people. Then I got to make my own decision, let them make their own decision of whether or not they like me, right? Mm-hmm. And you can move on. But these relationships are so important. And I got to be honest, I think our community, as crazy and messed up as it is still the best community in the world. I don't see communities pulling together the way we do. You know, we have a friend in need. We come together as a community and pull together and make stuff happen. And that part is really cool, but you can't do that if you haven't made those connections, if you're not connecting with people. Sure. You know, and Mark, something you said when you brought it back to the piece about, you know, that negative connotation, right? We're talking about being negative. Mm-hmm. You know, it's Mental Awareness Month, right? And mental health awareness, right? Not to be aware of people that are mental, but actually mental health awareness. There you go. Sure. And, you know, I've been talking about this a lot lately. I had two very, very close incidents with physical health and mental health. And they tie into each other, right? If you have poor physical health, it can lead to poor mental health. And if you have poor mental health, it can lead to poor physical health. And I had two deaths, one from physical health and one from mental health, that hit home for me in the last couple of months. And I've been really trying to bring this forward because I feel like we talk about it a lot, but we don't do anything about it. We all talk about it, and I know we all care. And I'm trying to bring this up in every conversation and then try to, you know, get people to understand why they should be doing more for themselves. And, you know, for me, I've pulled back from drinking quite a bit. Like, you know, you go to these events and it's a crazy free for all. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to eat healthier. And I'm trying to do stuff with my brain because I'm getting older. I got to start using my brain for other tasks. I'm doing puzzles. I look like an old man. But the fact of the matter is that, you know, most of us in this industry have stressful jobs. Sure. Owners of companies, being an owner of a company like yourself, Mark, is hard. And you have family relying on you. You have your customers relying on you. You have your employees relying on you. All these things come crashing down. What are you doing to take care of yourself? You need time for just you. You need time just for your family. You know, Certainly. You need to be able to make those adjustments. And it's something that listen, when I owned my MSP, I was an 80-hour-a-week guy. Like, and I still kind of am. Like, you know, I still, if you called me at night and I thought something was wrong, I'm going to pick the phone up. That's just what I do. Mm-hmm. But I also now take time out. People make fun of me. I'm a big massage guy, right? If I'm traveling, I'll take 15 minutes, a half hour out, even at an airport, find a spot, close my eyes and let my body get a little work and let my brain like rest, right? And just completely get away from it. And believe it or not, getting my tattoo that I showed you, that I talked about. Yes. That 6 hours was 6 hours of disconnected time. I put my phone down. I had a big bottle of water and a protein shake next to me. And I just zoned out and listened to the music they were playing in the shop while they did their work.
Mm-hmm.
So even things like that, just something that allows you to disconnect. And when you're doing that disconnection, don't think about work. Think about that. Think about nothing if you have to. Pull away. And if you're with your family, spend the time with the family. Think about them. Think about what you're doing there and how cool it is that you get to spend this time. You get to give your family that time because, man, it's so fleeting and so fast. And, my kids are all grown up now, and I got to spend time with them through a lot of it, but I also traveled a lot through it too. So there was a mix. And now I say, man, I give anything for some of those times where we were, at the baseball field or at the hockey rink or, I coached my kids in hockey all the way to high school. And
nice.
it's something that you miss when it's gone. You think about how crazy it was at the time when you were doing it. But now I tell people, my advice to people is soak it in. It goes fast.
Be in the moment when it's there, right? You can't go back to that later in time. I mean, and I appreciate you bringing up the health, the mental and physical aspect. We all know it's interconnected, and then we tie in spiritual and that. And so there's a lot, and as a leader of a company, in this case, we talked about entrepreneurs and running MSPs and the demands of that. You're right. It's not just about feeding our own mouth, but those around us, right? And make sure it just spreads out from there. So we need to be healthy and strong and mentally and physically. And I've, maybe you saw on social media recently, hit that half a century mark and celebrated that out in Vegas here, was a week ago or so. Prior to that, I just started doing a lot of reflecting, right? Going, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm going to be officially old or whatever we thought.
Hey, easy.
Right?
I passed that mark a couple years ago.
Well, it's another decade, right? It's a big number when you think about it. And where are you at in life, and where's that going to look at? What's the next half going to look like? But I had an incident where I went to the doctor and they go, hey, like, we need to, you're hypertensive. Like, no shit. Like, do you know what I deal with, right? Like, like, well, let's put you. I'm like, no, we're not putting on me anything. We're not doing that. Let me see if I can fix it. Right? Like, I know I've been slacking. So let me, focus on me, get that exercise in. I've since, that was January 16th. I've since dropped 35 pounds.
I see the difference, my friend. I do.
Thanks. I said, I'm making the effort. And, trying to, hey, even at that 30-minute session on the treadmill in the morning, getting that walk in, and get the incline walk in, trying to make that a priority. Even though, sleep needs to be a priority too. And I think we don't give ourselves enough of that. And I don't average enough nearly. But even this morning, it was like going, no, you've got it. Regardless, maybe I didn't get my full 30 in, but I got my 23, and I was like, hey, I got to get moving. But making that a priority, or even going on vacation or traveling, I still try to make sure I'm getting something in. Because that's the only way I'm going to combat a lot of these other things we're faced with.
Well, that's the other side of it, right? You're going to make yourself better prepared to handle all the crap that we're talking about, right? Instead of just being engulfed in it and getting stuck in the weeds and not having any moments, you're worse apt to handle everything. If you don't have the rests, if you don't get the mental breaks, if you don't get the physical breaks, if you don't do the things that you need to do, it's so much harder to dig out of that. And you feel like, there's so much pressure. I mean, in the case of, the thing that spun me around, Mark, the friend that, I won't go too deep into it, but the one friend that got so mentally unstable, he killed himself. And this person on the outside, like, sound old school Irishman, like, good family man, hard worker, worked for the union, all the things that line up to this not happening. And then he did it in front of his wife.
Oh my goodness.
So for me, there's so many things to unpack there, Mark, right? It's like, okay, time out. He had all these things going well. They were planning a vacation. Their kids are doing well in school. Their daughter actually goes to school. My daughter, that's how we found out about it. My daughter found out first, which was horrible. But there's so many things to unpack there, because for me, I always think, first of all, how bad does it get for you to have to do that? And just do it, the act alone, and then to do it in front of your wife. And then, and then have you think about, like, I think about everything. I think about my kids. I think about the people around me. Who would it affect? I'm just that guy. I always feel like any move that I make, what would it do to the people around me? Right. And sometimes I overthink that with things that I'm doing, but I couldn't unpack it, Mark. I couldn't figure out how bad what state your brain had to be in to get to that point and do that, knowing that that's it. That's the end. Yeah. That's it. And everybody around, and by the way, I sometimes say to myself, what a coward's way out, right? Because, you got to get out, but everybody around you is going to be affected for a very long time after that. But then, that's another thing that's going to be going through their brain. Like what does the human mind have to be going through for that to happen, right? And guess what? At the end of the day, what everybody said it was his job.
Oh my God. Wow.
Imagine that. It was his work that drove him to this, and his job in the union. And it's like, oh my God, that clicked for me. Like, then I was like, oh my God, I have so many friends I need to call right now. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, because in our industry, we see it. We have so much shit happen to us, whether there's a security incident, or employees leave, or employees do really bad stuff, or family problems, right? There's all these things that happen. And so what do we do as a community to at least, listen, we're not going to stop it, but maybe we can help it. And maybe we can have it happen less if we're aware and we start to talk to owners and everybody in the business, not just owners, because service managers, techs, everybody has stuff that they have to deal with. How do we do it without saying it? Because as well as I do, like, we eased into this conversation, then all of a sudden here we are, we're talking about it.
Right.
If you were at an event and there was a room where they were talking about mental health, how likely are you to go in there, right? And that's the thing. Most owners would be like, oh, I don't need that, and go to the next session. But if they happened in there and we were talking like this, I think that changes that narrative, because it's like, yeah, shit, I do have a lot of stuff on my plate, and my brain's all over the place. So changing that and making it happen. Because, by the way, this happened, Mark. CompTIA had a conversation around mental health. I think Desiree was on that panel.
Okay.
And they did a really great job, but I think it was like 90% of the people in the room were women. The men didn't go in, right? And I got to be honest, it's the men who need it most. From a standpoint of, the women are more in touch with, hey, I'm going to check this out, and I'm going to find ways to.
Well, but I'm assuming as a man, it's a sign of weakness if I'm in there, or I'm stronger than that. I'm stronger than that.
Yeah, that's what I mean when I say that. It doesn't mean that women don't work as hard, because I think they work harder. What I mean is, men are so stubborn, and they think, well, I'm weak if I go do that. And to me, now more than ever, we have to start being more vulnerable, and we have to have these conversations, and we have to understand this. And, obviously the pressures are for all business owners and for all people, humans. So, my point about the men and women is that I feel like, to me, women seem to be more in touch. They understand it. And I say it all the time. The reason why we need more women in the industry is because, quite frankly, they're just better than us, Mark. They are. I mean, every female tech that I've ever had has blown the men away. They get it. They move. They do their thing. Sure, they have different issues. Like men have different issues. We all have issues.
Yes, we do.
But I still feel like they're better. They're more in tune, and they click, and they work, and they go. But of course, like all of us, we have things we have to deal with in the mental side of our brain. So this helps all of us. But yeah, I sometimes have to be careful, Mark, because I have my friends, my female friends, who are like, hey, be careful there. That's not true. We need it too. I'm like, no, you're not getting what I'm saying. I don't mean it that way. What I mean is, we're just dumber about this stuff. We just don't get it. We think it's not a big deal. And like you said, it makes us weak, so I'm not going to have that conversation. I don't need that. I don't need to be in that room. And honestly, this whole entire community needs to be in that room. We all need to hear it. We all need to discuss it. We need to be open about it. And we don't need to be made fun of for being vulnerable on crap that's affecting us. Because, I'll tell you right now, I may be one of the biggest bears in the room as far as hey, I can be the tough guy, but I have problems and issues, and I need this stuff as much as the next person. I'm willing to admit that. And, I got to walk into more rooms where people are talking about this stuff and ways to handle the stress that hits you. And when you hit a wall, what are your next steps? Because I've been in situations where I felt like, holy crap, I have nowhere to turn. I have nowhere to go. What's my next step? And, luckily I had good support system around me and I clawed my way out. But I think if I was better prepared for those moments and I had better ideas of how to fix that and get my mental state right, I probably would have dealt with them even better.
I could imagine that. And being obviously educated in that, right? Like, so we talk about, we're all people and people have problems, right? We're all facing problems. So as part of that reflection I mentioned earlier, 2 years ago, I lost one of my best friends, and, that is just one individual. They stood at his bedside with my hand on his shoulder, as he passed over, right? Knowing that his lifestyle put him there.
Yep.
Right. If I look back further, when you start losing family members as we age, you start losing family members, start hitting a little bit closer to you, or a little bit harder. You're losing classmates. Right. Some of my best friends that I had in high school have committed suicide over the past 5 years. You start realizing you got to start thinking about some of this and how it's impacting. And we talk about understanding and even if it's, like I said, we're all going through stuff. We all have problems, and even reaching out to those people, right? Just checking in, especially, obviously, I'm part of a peer group. We have peers, we have people friends with, we know they're going through something. Sometimes it's hard from a timing aspect because we're being pulled in so many different directions, but stop yourself and just reach out, check in on them.
Yep.
Because that could be all the difference that they need in their world. It's just knowing that, hey, you're there. I've used this example before. We've had instances, as you talk about community and coming together as peers to helping one another out, right? Showing up on the doorstep and lending a hand. Or I remember me being coaxed to say, hey, come to Arizona. If anything, you need to come and need to let us surround you so we can work this out, these problems you're having, right? Because I was going through a huge thing at the time.
Yeah, I had, you're right. And as we get older, we have more and more of that, right? The classmates, the friends, the people who are, I had that going along was a crazy thing, right? Lifestyle. You said that, I had a friend who rode motorcycles like a complete lunatic, and that caught up with him. It wasn't his fault, but it doesn't matter because he was always speeding and running around, and a truck pulled out in front of him and boom. So, it's like, what do we do when that happens, and how do we, deal with our own emotions about it? Right. My wife knew him very well too. And my wife would just keep saying, you're so stupid. He's stupid. She's mad at him because, it's like, look what you did. You left us in this state. And, how did you do that? And then there's the other side where I had a friend who basically, now this probably was mental that led to physical. He basically drank himself to death. And we didn't realize the kid was leaving work, going to the liquor store, buying a bottle and drinking the whole thing every night. And that was his routine. Yeah. He would go home from work, buy a bottle, come home, blah, blah, blah. And nobody really caught it. You know what I mean? No one caught this happening. So you just don't know what was going through his mind, what was happening. He went through a divorce, but didn't, maybe if you had the conversation when we could have said, hey, but you got your kids. You don't want to leave them, and you still want to love them, right? But maybe that conversation just never got had because no one knew that he was completely miserable.
Right.
So,
and obviously the bottle didn't solve anything for him, right? But and once again, without getting the proper help or the proper channel or proper support, people turn to substances, whether it be alcohol or anything else.
I feel like you disappear in it.
Yeah. And you just get sucked into that, and it becomes a habit. Habitually, that's what they're doing. And it's not good for them. It's not helping depression. It's not helping them, face it, I'm going to share something with you that I don't really share. I'm sharing this publicly. There was a point in my life not too many years ago that I would wake up with an empty vodka bottle in my bed with me.
Yeah.
That's how I was dealing with my business problems at the time. I was driving down the Ohio Turnpike with vodka in my coffee cup in the morning, commuting to work.
Yep.
right? Now, I don't do that today, but it goes back to going at the time. And thankfully I was able to get myself out of that.
Right.
But that could have been.
And that's Mark, by the way, you need to tell this story more, because that's the story of, hey man, I was there and look at me now, right? That mentality your story has to be shared, because that's the thing, is not enough people are willing to share. Just like the MSPs that have been breached, right? Or had an incident. We don't use the B word anymore, right? Those people that have come out and told their stories have made it better for other MSPs to understand it can happen to anybody. Because when people just shut their mouths and didn't say anything, it's like, yeah, but it's not happening to anybody I know, right? It's the same mentality. What you just mentioned is the same mentality. Mark, you're not the only person to go to bed with a alcoholic bottle in their bed and wake up with it, and you're not the only person who puts alcohol in their coffee. I bet you there are people right now that will be listening to this podcast and will say, shit, like I'm doing that right now, right? It happens. We get it. You're finding ways to deal. But remember, that ending is not great. And there are ways to stop that motion and get it going in a positive direction, because that leads to so many other things. And by the way, it doesn't just lead to your problems. It leads to multiple other problems, whether you end up on the side of the story that you and I have been talking about, or you hurt someone else.
Right.
Like that's the part that people don't think about. Like, what if you were out and you hurt somebody else, right? Then there's a whole other side to this story. So, man, there's so many ways that we need to be able to fix this and talk about this. And what you just said, Marcus, was huge and beautiful. And seriously, like, the story needs to be shared more so that someone who's going through it can be like, it's not just me. And there is hope. Look, Mark's very successful. He's on the other side of it now. He looks great. Lost a lot of weight. Looks good. He's doing his thing. That's what we need to see more of. And I get super, corny or cheesy or whatever you want to say about it when it comes to our community as a whole. People know it. I give up my time at shows and people are like, what are you doing? Don't you want to sell your product? I'm like, no, I want to talk about community. And then people will come and talk to us about the stuff that I do. Mm-hmm. Right. A community is more important. Pull each other together, pull each other up. And then people will want to talk to us about what we do. And, sure, I'll talk about what I do. Right. But I do believe that community comes first. And I'm super focused on this right now as far as mental and physical health, because one of the people that I was talking about that we lost to the physical side was part of our channel. He was a vendor. He was worked for some of the vendors. He was an MSP. He worked for some of the vendors. He worked for Lion Guard. And he went to a big MSP, and then he got his shit straight. He actually was on the other side of it, Mark, and didn't make it. He ended up having a heart attack in his bed at a hotel with his wife at a conference. And so, really, really great human being who really had turned it around, was getting things straight, married the love of his life, was just everything was good. I literally talked to him right before he went on this trip. And then that happened. And yeah, I'll get super emotional about it because, that's a guy who was trying to turn it around and just didn't do it in time. So you got to think about these things and try to find a way to, get that laser focus and get back on track. It is doable. Like you said, you did it. I was much, much earlier in life doing that kind of crazy stuff and pulled myself out of, I grew up in the projects. Not a lot of people know that full story, but I was not a money kid. I grew up in the projects. I scammed my way through high school. My first job was supposed to be an electronics job. I lied and I told them I was fixing car radios, but I was really just working at an auto shop in the parts department because it paid more money. It was all about the money, right? I was just kind of scamming my way through everything. And it was my wife who actually put me back in school and didn't even tell me.
Really?
Just literally. Oh yeah. She registered me for a school and then came up to me on a Friday and said, hey, on Monday, we're going to visit your new school. And I'm like, what? So when people talk about the women behind them, that's my wife. She literally turned my life around. I went back to school. I already knew electronics because of high school. So electronics I was good at. I knew nothing about computers, and it was like a beautiful mind moment. All of a sudden, I knew computers better than anyone. I could talk about them. I felt when I couldn't explain it to people, I would freak out. Like, this is so easy. How do you not get this? Like that's how crazy of the switch it was. I went to Fidelity Investments and I became this Microsoft guy that when Microsoft wasn't a big deal. and started to take off. And then Microsoft started to go like this, and my climb was the same. Microsoft tried to hire me, and I wouldn't go because I was so invested in this first company. And they ended up making me a partner at this first company, which we then became an MSP down the line, quite by accident. But we were doing the MSP thing before it was called MSP. We were doing the precious metals before. I stole precious metals from another industry. I didn't get that from this industry. So it was before all that. I did the bronze, silver, gold. I took that from like an insurance company or some other industry, just the fact how it lined up, and we pieced it together. Yeah. So it was an interesting climb from where I was to where, to where I came. And the two worlds collide every now and again. When that new company that I went to, we did a lot of IT work for prisons.
Okay.
We actually supported the commissaries that, had their indigent items, their food, and all the things that went along with it. And I'm in a jail here in Massachusetts, walking up the stairs, and an inmate yells out, "Kenny!" And the guard goes, "Do you know him?" And I'm like, "Nope." And we just kept going up the stairs. And I knew who it was.
Oh my goodness. Oh.
Yeah. So every now and again, like the worlds will collide. I'll bump into someone and say, "You're doing what?" I'm like, "Yeah, I've stepped away from that whole entire world and pulled myself out of it." And sometimes some of it was hard, and some of it, but making the turn and realizing, hey, dum dum, you're going in the wrong direction. Because I thought I was going to corner the Ford parts department market because there were no young people that knew Ford parts. I actually could still tell you part numbers to Ford vehicles.
That's nuts.
Yeah, I still have them all in my brain. So my brain worked that way, but I just didn't know it had anything to do with computers. And then when the computer shit came along, I learned Novell in 3 months, like all of Novell, all the networking tricks and tips, and I could build a Novell network out. And then I learned Microsoft in a back room in Fidelity when they told us, if we catch you with any Microsoft machines, you'll be fired. I had 4 set up in the back room, and I was just like plugging away trying to figure out what's going on with Microsoft. And so I was NT351 back when that was like super hard and crazy to use, and then 4.0. I was the first 4.0 certified person in the Northeast.
Wow.
It was pretty funny, and I didn't pass it the first time. By the way, it took me 3 tries. It was hard. Yep,
that's amazing. It's amazing. Hey, to always carry that badge, right? Hey, I did this thing way back when, right?
Yeah, I also was responsible in big part for small business server spreading through the Northeast like crazy. So I also apologize for that. But that's what people say to me. Wait, what? I'm like, yeah, dude, I'm sorry. We got so big into small business server that we were second behind Ingram. Think about that. Ingram's a friggin' distributor. We were just an MSP. We were selling so much small business server. We sold more SBS than anybody except for Ingram.
Goodness.
Yeah, but maybe for good reason, because we probably shouldn't have, because those things turned out to be a nightmare. But
well, that's all behind us now, right?
Yeah.
But plenty of people made plenty of money off SBS in over the years.
Oh, I was definitely one of those people. We had it was fun while it lasted. It worked really well, considering if I was smarter at the time, I probably would have said to myself, how in the hell can you put a server with Exchange, SQL, what was the other thing on the Crystal Reports, all in one server? How is one server going to handle all that? But, at the time it was like, wow, they figured some stuff out. No.
Yeah. No. So you touched a little bit on your upbringing. You said you came from obviously a rough part of town.
Yep.
And you faked your way through what you were doing.
I would say, yeah, I would say faked, scammed, it was all about growing up in the projects, it was all about that, trying to find a better word for it, but for lack of a better term, just kind of, scamming and scheming and getting to the next level, right? Because everything was, I got to find a way to get around this mess, I got to find a way to get over here. How can I get money? Because you don't have money, right? You're poor. So you're trying to find ways. And, listen, I'm not going to say I didn't do some stupid bad things when I was younger to get to that point, right? But I finally realized that, the school aspect of it was going to pay off if I could start to apply myself. And I didn't come to that conclusion on my own, between my father and a teacher kicking me in the ass. That kind of started to come to fruition late in high school. I actually had a math teacher grade me on my homework, not my tests, because I could pass any test. It was weird. I just had this math acumen and I could pass the test. And he was like, how are you passing these tests? You don't hand in any work. You must be cheating. I'm like, give me a test right now. That's how I was like cocky little, and he gave me a test. I passed it. And he was like, well, shit. He goes, okay, well, guess what? I'm like, what? He goes, I'm going to grade you on your homework from now on. I'm like, wait, what? So I had to start doing homework and going through the motions and learning that stuff. And then as it turned out, that same teacher, when I was in high school, put me into this national math award thing that I didn't even know about. And I finished second in the country on this, whatever it was. I don't even know what it was. Like I said, that wasn't that kid, but that kind of like sparked something in me. And I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
And so I was a senior in high school. I was supposed to be, they had co-op jobs because we were at a tech school.
Okay.
And I was taking electronics. That was my jam. And they wanted to put me at like a place cleaning out pagers. And I'm like, that's not really electronics. And it paid like, $4.50 an hour back in the day. And I could make $6 an hour at the dealership where I was already working. So I came up with a scam and I said, hey, and I even convinced the people at the dealership to do it with me. I'm like, hey, can we just say I'm fixing radios here so it works for my co-op? And the teacher even came out to the freaking place and interviewed my boss. And my boss basically bold-faced lied to him, said, yeah, he's fixing these radios here. And I pulled the whole thing off. It was great, except I didn't realize it was sinking me, down a path that I would have to turn around and come back to. But yeah, I was working in a parts department and I was learning part numbers, and I was the youngest guy. And at the time, parts managers and people like that were making really good money. They had company cars. They had, 4 weeks vacations. They had the life, but it was slowly getting pulled away. The industry was changing and they were losing those things and people were losing their jobs and auto shops started to go downhill. So while I probably would have been the number one parts manager anywhere I went, it wouldn't have paid me well and I wouldn't have got those same perks. So my wife, like I said, enrolled me back in class and here I am. I learned Novell in 3 months. I learned Microsoft in 6 months. Fidelity had some weird battle over me, and I ended up on the short end of the stick of Fidelity. And I walked into a IT company that my wife ended up knowing was a friend of a friend, and the rest is history. I walked in and said, I don't know shit, but don't undercut me because I think my first kid was going to be on the way. And 3 months time, was it 3 months? 3 months, I learned their whole business. 6 months, I became service manager, and a year, I became partner.
That's an amazing story. And tell me that's an accelerated timeline. So what about you at that time was providing that success?
Oh, there's a couple things. And I still say to this day, the one thing that, not one, because there was a few things. Growing up the way I grew up makes now feel like I can take chances because what's the worst that can happen to me compared to then? And when I say I grew up in a bad neighborhood, I have a number of knife wounds and, I've been in some pretty nasty scraps.
Okay.
And not always on the winning side. So I always think about how rough that life was. Mm-hmm. And I always say, what's the worst that could happen? This is just business. It's kind of funny, right? I laugh about it because I'm willing to take some chances, and not crazy chances, but I'm willing to take chances that most wouldn't. And I knew that it couldn't get much worse than where I was way back then. So that kind of always sat in the back of my head. And so those chances were things like, I would shut something off that nobody else would shut off. The old turn it off and turn it back on thing before that was popular, would work a lot of times and people would freak out. What are you doing? You're going to turn it off? Yeah, click. Oh no. And people would freak out. Right. And then when I got the job at the IT company, I had already done a lot with Microsoft at Fidelity unbeknownst to them. And, I decided to take the whole entire network at this IT company and switch them from Novell to NT. And I did it without anybody knowing. I set up the NT gateway and made the connector, and I started moving stuff over and making connections and started running different things from it. And I sandboxed everything before I did it. But we had a development side of the business. One of the partners was the development side. One of the partners was the MSP or the IT side.
Mm-hmm.
And so I made this switch, and all of a sudden this guy, he was kind of a hard ass, brings me in the conference room and said, Ken, what's going on with the network? I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, I'm noticing some significant changes. Like, it's running faster. Like the dev stuff is just moving right along. And I'm like, oh, thank God. Like, I'm going to get fired.
Yeah, right.
And then I'm like, well, Paul, I switched this over to Microsoft. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, yeah, we're on NT 4.0. We've been on it for like 2 months now, fully. I sandboxed everything. And he's like, holy crap. So then they were like a little nervous, but then they kind of settled in because things were running right. So I did that change.
That's ballsy.
Yeah. It started to do things where, I knew it could be better, but if I sat and took the time and had to explain and go through it, they would never have done it. But if I just do it, they would go through it. So I did some cowboy stuff.
Yeah, right?
Maybe I wouldn't do some of that stuff now. But, so I switched them over to Microsoft, and then I went to pass took a course, one of those New Horizons schools for NT, and I got lucky. My instructor was a guy who worked directly with Bill Gates for many, many years and had some really crazy stories about Bill Gates and Microsoft and the whole thing. And he had said to us after the class, okay, guys, good luck passing the exam. You have a better chance of passing the bar exam. And he wasn't wrong. At the time, the questions were all dynamic. So if you got a question about Mac on NT and got it wrong, the next question would be about Mac NT. That's what
lucky you. Yeah.
It was really, really hard to pass because some of the questions were around remote access services, which wasn't a big thing, back then. That what it is now, the cloud was RAS back then. And a bunch of stuff that, I had to relearn because I failed the first couple of exams because of that. I then passed the test. And of course, that was incumbent of me getting a raise once I passed that exam because I said, we're going to go Microsoft and we'll get certified. So not only did I pass the test and was the first person in Northeast, which, by the way, the teacher at the school, one of the, not the teacher, but the girl, the admin who runs all the people taking the test, she puts you in the booth and you do the thing, came running in and jumped up and down, hugging me and screaming. And I'm like, everybody's taking their test. She goes, I don't care. This is the first one. Apparently the school also got rewarded for having passing tests. So I got the school some money apparently by passing that test. And I exited the building. I walked across the crosswalk, kicking my feet up in the air, and basically did my version of show me the money when I called the partners and said, I just became 4.0 certified.
Wow. That was quite the accomplishment. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I just kind of, it was a weird thing. I can't explain the knowledge of computer side of the business. Like, I can't explain how that happened. Like, I had a little brother who had a computer at my house. I didn't know how to turn the thing on. Like, I knew nothing about computers. And then I went from that to really understanding how they work. Most people probably won't believe this, and I screwed up. I probably should have documented it and made some money off of it. Back when remember Windows for Workgroups?
Yes.
So Windows for Workgroups would not work well with Novell. You tried to install it, it would fail and have all these problems. Well, I spent some time with a friend, and we found exactly the drivers and the DLLs that were missing, and we created a disk 6.5, I think it was. And you go through Windows Workgroups putting those disks in, and then you'd get that failure. You'd put my disk in, it would load the DLLs that were on that disk, and you'd go to disk 7, and it worked. And we found a way to get Windows Workgroups to connect to Novell, because back at the day, there was no 95, there was no, Lantastic was the only other, thing that could connect computers to each other properly, and it worked. And I gave it to everybody who wanted it. Dumbass. I really should have documented it, and I should have found a way to sell it, but I didn't. I just gave it to everybody and everybody that wanted it. And
especially coming from a guy who was always scamming or scheming, like, when you would have been like, hey, this is opportunity, right? Like,
yeah, I didn't do that in business. Maybe I didn't learn that early enough in business, but yeah, I did all that. And then, rolling along and becoming part of Microsoft actually got word and tried to hire me away from this company. So that's how I became owner, because the Microsoft was calling me and asking me, say how we'll fly you out, we'll fly your wife out, we'll wine and dine you, we want to have a conversation. And I kept saying I'm too busy. And Microsoft doesn't like that. They don't like it when people tell them they're too busy. So they kept coming at me hard. And then finally the owners found out about it of the company, and they brought me in a room. I'm like, here we go. I'm getting fired. Like, I don't know how these guys are thinking. And they were like, we heard Microsoft's been reaching out. We also heard you turn them down, and we don't want this to ever happen again. And I'm like, oh, here we go. And they're like, we want to make you a partner. So they made me a partner, started me at 5%. I worked my way up to the full third partner with the three of them over the course of maybe a year. And wow. I became a partner in the company, and I brought fresh new perspective, right? They were old school, you do your job because you're getting paid type of owners. And I was the guy like, no, that's not how it works. We got to keep these guys happy. We got to perk them. We got to spiff them. We got to take care of them. And so I kind of brought that new attitude to the company, and one of the owners got it and one of the owners didn't. One of them made it very difficult for the first couple of years going through it. He didn't like the idea that I was earning the way I was earning. So he changed my commission program probably 6 times. And every time he changed it, I crushed it even harder. I would just, he couldn't find ways to make me not make money. It was hilarious. Mark, remind me sometime. I'll dig them up and I'll show up to you. You'll laugh at some of these plans and what the programs entailed and what I had to do to make extra cash at the company, instead of them just finally agreeing, you know what, we're going to give you this because you're just crushing the commission thing and smashing it.
Wow. So what, okay. So you did everything they presented to you, you just overcame and smashed it. Yeah. What is it about you that allows you to do that?
Well, like I said, what's the worst that can happen if I work towards whatever the goal is, whatever they're telling me I need to do? I had already been in a place that was pretty bad and also pretty good. I wouldn't trade my life growing up in the projects for nothing, because that's where I think I also have my sense of community from, and why I believe so deeply in what we do as a community and how we all pull together and all of that. So that's one part of it. The other part of it is, what's the worst that can happen? I think there's a right answer here, and I'm going to strive to get it. And what's the worst that's going to happen? They're going to let me go. They're going to fire me. Oh my God, what will I do? Like, that's how I kind of went through life. Now, as I'm getting older and I have 4 kids, and, maybe I think more about the pressures of if I didn't have a job, right? What would happen? But all the way through that time when I was younger, I realized I was young. And I could do anything. I could pick something up and learn it and do it. And I knew I could get the job done. So I think, the biggest roadblock for all of us, as far as I'm concerned, is us. I think we get in our own ways way too much. We talk ourselves out of things that we would normally not want to talk ourselves out of. And I don't think we rely on mentors and friends enough. I think you have to have people in your life that you can bounce ideas off. And be honest, a lot of times it was the person that wasn't just like me, because you need someone that has a different opinion from you, right? And the closest thing I can tie to that is Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, right? 2 very different people, and people can say what they want, but they got the most out of each other because they were very different, both driven, but in different ways, right? And different mindsets. And so, for me, one was I wasn't going to go back to that place that I grew up, right? I wasn't going back to that. So I always had a fire in my belly to drive forward. And sometimes it was off a cliff, but I managed to survive those falls too. But and that's the whole thing. Look, drive forward as hard as possible and understand you're going to make mistakes, but make those mistakes quick and then move on. Because that's the problem. We make a mistake, we fall in a hole, and we're like, oh my God, what are we going to do? Spend less time doing that and more time saying, I know I'm going to try something else. I know I can succeed at this next thing. And we all get there in different ways, right? I just feel like, and also be real, be genuine. I started to learn that I just got to be me. And sure, not everyone's going to like me. That's okay. But be yourself, be genuine, be real. There's too much fake garbage in the world right now, just across the board. We don't need any of that. It's very rare now to find genuine human beings. And I think there's more and more of us in this industry. If you're just genuine and you work hard and you push and you ask for help, you can pretty much go anywhere.
No, great words of wisdom there, and life experience. And, this podcast, you talk about help. This podcast is a mission of hope to help one person every day through the podcast, of giving back, right? And you talk about, where are people at? You and I will be seeing each other in just a few days. Obviously, this episode will release many weeks from now, but that is me giving back, right? Because I know I'm just one of hope. I hope I can help one person in that room that maybe are in a spot that I've been in that caused me to make the changes I made, and maybe my story will help them.
Yep.
Or they know that they're not alone in the world, right? That someone else has been through it, and this is how they got through it. So help one another, right?
Yeah, it's all about community, Mark. That's the one, like I said, we have the best community on the planet. And if we can find ways to help each other and help new people coming in and just people in general, I'm there. And I say this to people, and it's funny how little people take you up on it when you tell them, hey, I'll help out, right? It's like, no, I'm not joking about this. I've had people say to me, and I'll say it on here too, look, find me on LinkedIn, connect with me. Mark will have my contact information. If you need help with anything, regardless of what it is, you know what I do for a living, but with anything, reach out. I may not even know the answer, but I may know someone who does. And that's a start. That's how you can start. So definitely. I put myself out here for everybody because I need help all the time. And if I don't get that help, I know how stressful it can be. So being able to talk to somebody, and maybe it's someone different like me. I'm different. If you need to talk to someone, reach out, send me a message. I have a few initiatives going right now. And that don't have anything to do with me. And everybody should do the same. I'm doing something right now with all the layoffs that just happened. I put myself out there and offered myself up for anybody that got laid off to have a conversation with, maybe point them in the right direction. And Mark, I've even invited some of those folks out in Denver to the event so that they can come out and meet MSPs and vendors and just have conversations. And who knows, maybe it sparks a job for them. Maybe it sparks a link to a job. Mm-hmm. But the point is, there's so many small ways you can help out in the community. Like I said, I'm having these people just come out to the event, and they're going to have the availability to talk to vendors and MSPs, make new connections. You never know where that connection could take you. It doesn't mean that person's going to hire you or that person's going to do something for you right then and there. But if you make a good connection, they may know somebody who knows somebody and tie that connection together.
It's a very small world.
Yeah, it's a small sandbox we play in, Mark. That's for sure.
So you did mention that's one of your initiatives. What's your other initiative?
Well, I do have and by the way, you're invited. I don't know if, you're so busy too, but I do a community call every Thursday that basically it's vendors, MSPs, and we just go on there. Some of them have called it their therapy session.
Okay.
We've done this. I started it in COVID. During COVID, I used to do Tuesdays and Thursdays, and we had like 40 to 60 people on there. It was crazy.
How could I not know about this?
I don't know how. I think I mentioned it at the meeting too, but you probably didn't listen to me. You only wanted to sing karaoke.
Yeah. You know me. I'm always grabbing the mic.
But no. So we started back then during COVID, and now it's still going on Thursdays. It's every Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern time. And it's just an hour of whoever wants to chat. We talk about everything from security to food. It's an open forum. We don't record it. We don't put it out on social because we want people to be frank and be open and be able to say the things they want to say. So remind me, Mark, I'll just send you the invite to it so you have it. But anybody can reach out and be a part of that. We do it every Thursday. Sometimes we have 10 people on there. Sometimes we have 30 people on there. I don't expect people to be there. What I do is I send the calendar invite for the year, and you don't have to respond to that. You just have it on your calendar. And if you're busy, you don't come. If you're not busy, you pop on. If you can pop on for a half hour, pop on for a half hour. And I think people pick up nuggets there of information. And during COVID, we actually helped close to 20 people get their PPP loans, the right PPP loans.
Wonderful.
We helped a bunch of people with their marketing. Like, there was just crazy conversations during COVID that a lot of people got super successful. In fact, they're not on the call anymore because they got so busy. Seriously, crazy stuff happened. One of them got bought out. Like, there was a lot of people on those calls that had successful things happen because we learned and we did some cool stuff on there. And that's all it is. It's just doing things like that, simple things. It's not that difficult. Even during COVID, when I did the tour bus thing and we were driving around the country, one little extra thing we did was we made every MSP pay us in canned goods. We just said, bring 2 canned goods to the event, and we'll lump those all together. And whoever the MSP was that was hosting us could donate that to their local food bank.
Very nice.
Or their local charity, right? Not hard to do. Just pull that together and be able to do things like that. And I knew that my old city that I grew up in, the one we were talking about, was struggling during COVID for the food bank. So I figured there must be other food banks struggling. So we traveled around the whole country. That's what we did. We just collected canned goods and stuff that people had brought in, and then we'd give it to the local MSP that was hosting us, and they would bring it to their charity of choice.
Love it. Amazing. That's awesome of you to do that.
And it's, again, it's these are things that any one of us can do. It's not about me. It's about sparking ideas for how you can help. And by the way, community doesn't just mean us. Community is about everybody that we come in contact with. So that's, like I said, the food banks in your local area are part of your community. Help out in any way you can. Help out with places that are around your organization. It does do your business well, even though it's not meant to be that way. And I say it that way because if you're out in the community doing things like that, that gets recognized by businesses. And I think when businesses see you out there doing things that don't have anything to do with technology, but have everything to do with the community, it's just another way to make yourself stand out from the rest. Not that you're doing it for that reason, but it does help. So, I mean, bottom line too, when we talk about community, Mark, because I feel like community is thrown around almost as much as cloud now.
Okay.
You know what I mean? It's just a term to people now, and it's not. Because you have customers, that's not a community. A community is not about belonging. It's about belonging to something that makes belonging matter. That's the difference. That's what real community is. And, I learned, that's how I always thought of it, but I couldn't put it on paper until I talked to Eric Bowles. And Eric Bowles made that statement to me, and I was like, oh my God, that's 100% accurate. Because a lot of the vendors and a lot of the companies think, oh, we got a community. These are our customers over here. Really? A community, when it matters and you belong to it, it makes it feel like it matters, is way different. And the way I can explain it, because of my experience in the past, was the PAX8 experience. I was a big part of that community growing when we grew that from 3,000 members to 15,000 members. And they weren't just members. They weren't just customers. They became stark raving fans of what PAX8 did, because we built them as a community, not as customers.
Okay. We
helped them be better, right? That's how you build a community, when you're helping the people that you serve be better, right? Without asking for anything in return you give, right? It's not the with them, right? It's not what's in it for me. It's what's in it for you. Mark, how can I help you? How can I serve you? And I don't want anything in return. That's community. And so if more businesses could take that approach, they'll start to see wins happen in a much more organic way. And by the way, wouldn't it be nice to stop talking about sales? Because I'm so sick of sell. We don't have to sell what we do. People need it. MSPs are the first responders of the business world. You're saving people's businesses the way that first responders save people's lives. And in essence, you're saving their lives too, because their lives are their business. That's their livelihood, right?
Yes, right.
So what better way to do it than to help everybody be better? Vendors need to learn to do that with MSPs. MSPs need to learn to do that with their customers. Make them better. And when they're not talking about sales, when you're not, your salespeople aren't saying, hey, I got a quota to me. Can you buy some licenses? Like, come on. Seriously? No one wants to hear that. But what if they call you because they know, hey, you guys educated me on this new thing over here, and I didn't know anything about that, and now I need that. They're calling you for the sale. You're not calling them. It's a reversal, and it's how it should be done. Just like I call a doctor when I have a problem, right? The customers will start calling you when they have a problem. And the MSPs, as MSPs, will actually talk to the vendors when we have a problem if they better educate us as MSPs, right? So it's this trickle down effect, trickle across. I don't want to say down because I don't think anybody's below anybody else. But I truly believe that community is at the heart of it all. And if you do it right, we don't have to talk about that dirty sales word in that aspect. You can have it all be based on relationships and working with people.
Relationships are everything.
Yep.
And you're building those through community, through giving back, helping others become better, because I'm all about becoming better myself, right? I'm on a journey of growth. And we talked about the being better, giving back community. My thing is, you mentioned with the podcast, right? Like giving back, trying to leave things maybe slightly better than what I inherited it, right? Because face it, we talk about negativity in the world and everything. Oh, the world's going to shit. Okay, what are we doing to make a difference?
Right.
Right. I mean, you can have an impact.
Yep.
How much impact you're going to make, right? That's up to you.
100%. And, like I said about people say, oh, I don't have time. No, there's always time to do the right thing. There's just always time to do the right thing. And it will circle back. If you're doing these right things and you're working in the right direction and your heart's in the right place, it'll come around. It'll work. And for me, I don't know, I've been doing this a long time, over 20 years. And for me, I get corny because people don't believe it. But for me, the stories of the people that I've helped are way better than, some of the dollars I could have earned by going down a wrong path or going to the wrong vendor that, I just couldn't sell my soul to the devil and do stuff like that. Of course there are vendors who would probably hire me and try to use me but not go down the road I want them to go down or not do it in the way I want them to. And I just couldn't do that. And I would say, is my wife listening? Because I don't want her to know that. But, I won't take that the money over my soul. I want to work with people, the thing I love to do, right? That's what makes me, I'll reverse this. I'm not as good as people think I am at my job.
Okay.
I'm only good at it because I love it. So if I believe in the company I'm working for, I believe in the solution, and I believe in it's going to help MSPs because that's really my goal right now and my focus. That actually makes me feel really good. That's the part that takes me to the next level. And that's why I look like I'm doing a great job, because I love what I do so I can do it better, if that makes sense. It's just who I am. It's allowing me to be who I am, and I love that part. If I can get out there and do good and help people, and I've had so many MSPs come back to me. And then of course, I'll tell you, some things during COVID that really got me right here. I could get a little emotional talking about them. We were in Memphis, and part of the giving back to the community was we would hire local food trucks that had no work, right? Because they had no work. They were out of work. And the food truck guy in Memphis came out and burst into tears like 2 or 3 times and gave me a big hug and just said, my wife and I were really struggling here. We have nothing coming in. And this was amazing. And, all that. And
so cool.
Yeah, man, dude. So things like that, where you're just like, look at the effect we had just by coming here and doing what we needed to do anyways. But we brought in the food truck and gave them some cash. We got the food banks. We gave them the food. Mm-hmm. The tour bus driver and the tour bus, they were out of business. We were paying them to drive us around the country, right? The hotels we were staying at, nobody was staying at hotels. So these hotels were pretty thankful at actually rolling out the red carpet. Well, at least some of them had basically couldn't get their rooms ready even by 10 p.m. It was a weird time. But for the most part, they appreciated that we were out there doing this because it was bringing money to the economies that weren't getting anything.
No, that's amazing thing. It got you obviously out there. You still had the mission at hand, and it benefited others, right? Along the way. I mean, it was definitely helpful for everybody. And those small things, right? They make a difference. They do make a difference. They all add up.
It's not anything crazy to give some time back, and you don't realize how huge the impact could be on the other side.
Yeah.
The people that it's affecting. And for that, that's the most rewarding thing for me. I love talking to an MSP who said, "Hey, Ken, I talked to you like 3 years ago and I tried this thing and holy shit, it was wildly successful." And it's just like, awesome. That's cool. Right. And I don't want nothing in return. That's what I want in return. I want the story. I want them to come back and say, I had a weird one, a long-term one, Mark. I'm talking pre-cloud. This guy had a data center, and I just basically was like, dude, and I know people are very successful. We have friends that are successful in the data center world, but I just kept saying to him, dude, it's a liability. Like, you got to figure something out, especially where he was. It was more for where he was and all that. Like 4 years later, just last year, I think it was, I bumped into him. He's like, Ken, hey, I haven't seen you in so long. You're not going to believe it. I'm on my last server. He goes, I phased out 60 my internal servers out of my data center. I'm all Amazon. And he's like, I'm rolling in it and I have no liability. I'm like, wow. And he's like, that was thanks to you, man. You really had a hard conversation about it. Told me the truth about your thoughts. I didn't lay it on him like, you got to do this. I just said, here's my opinion. Like, here's the things I worry about. And he did it and he changed it. And so hearing something where you just gave a little bit of advice. And by the way, I don't ever tell anybody what I say is gospel. You got to listen to me. I hate that. I hate the people that it's my way or the highway. If you don't do this, you're stupid. That's not me at all. My thing is, if you can glean some kind of nugget out of what I'm saying at any given time, that's cool. Take it and use it for what your business does, because not every business is the same. I'm not one of those guys that shoots down the break fix guys. I think we need break fix guys because who's going to do it? Where the people in the MSP field don't want to do it, right? So why are we shooting down people who do break fix?
Right.
I don't think that people who do break fix should call themselves MSPs and try to do the MSP work. That's a whole different thing. That's a level of immaturity that we talk about. But I'll never put anybody down for being break fix. If that's what you want to do, run with it. Whatever you want to do.
Yeah, because I know individuals that are making very good living doing that.
If you're making money and it works for you, run with it. Don't listen to anybody that tells you this is how you do it. And by the way, the MSP space, we say it. What do we say? It's 100 ways to skin a cat. There's 1,000 ways to do things. There's all these different sayings, and they're true. The main thing you have to do is do something. Get help. Get coaching. Find ways to get that help that you need. You can't go it alone, and be ethical, be genuine.
Yes.
Those are the ways you can start your core and go and launch off. Separate from that, there's a bunch of different ways. Taylor Business Group has a way. These other groups have a way. There's coaches that have a different way. It's okay. I don't think any one of them are completely wrong unless they tell you it's the only way. Then I would start looking at other places, right? It's not the only way. Taylor Business Group has benchmarks that work for Mark and work for some MSPs. They don't work for everybody, and not everybody loves them, and that's okay. That's the approach you should be looking at. Someone who understands there's not one thing that fixes the whole world, especially in the MSP business.
Well, and you talk about it's a guidance, right? It's something. And then I think recently talked too is, hey, there's a lot of concepts out there.
Right.
You can't do them all. Yeah. It's a lot of noise, right? Like focus, get some momentum, make some changes here. But you can't tackle it all, right?
No.
And you with Taylor Business Group and coaching, we had a guest recorded yesterday or 2 days ago, another coach. We talk about coaching and the impact it has on lives, and not only just professional, but in the personal and spiritual side of things, right? Like it's that means of, we even talked about walking into the room for mental health, right? Put your ego aside. Put your willingness to, how do I say this, to not subject yourself to feeling vulnerable, right? And learn, right?
Right.
Learn about how you're going to handle this thing. Or maybe you could help someone else down the road with that information.
Yep. It's, I truly believe that, there is a bunch of ways to do this, but if you focus and if you find what works for you, make the connection, the people, whatever works for you, but do something. Don't just sit back and say, woe is me. The world is shitty. Everything's coming down around us. With that attitude, you'll never get anywhere. Your first step should be out of the weeds. That's my thing. First step, take a step out of the weeds and put everything aside and think of it from out here. First of all, doesn't out here feel really nice? It's really nice, right? So your goal should be to get out of the weeds permanently and be able to do the old cliche, work on the business, not in the business, right? But you can't do that without help. You're not going to step out and then step back in and rip everything apart while you're in there and fix it. You have to be able to step out, plan. What's your plan for getting out completely? What's your next step? You need to keep being able to step out until you can step out permanently and run the business from that standpoint where, hey, now I'm running the business as a business owner and not as the man who wears every other hat that we don't have in the business.
The job that I created for myself, right?
There's ways to get there, but your first step is to do something. I don't tell you where to go or who to talk to. Your first step is to look at it and find help, and get to that point. And by the way, it doesn't mean you start right off with the big stuff. If you're smaller, you can start out with getting into groups that are just free groups that you can chat with people, talk to other MSPs, and not just the ones on social media that do all the complaining and tell you that every vendor sucks, because every vendor does not suck. You need to find people who are successful, find out why they're successful, the vendors that they use to make them successful, and then you can start to roll up and ask questions and do those things.
Yeah, I love the advice and the insight. And yes, stay away from the internet groups or rooms or things that full of negativity, right? I know that I'm, a member of some of those things, and I just ignore. I really don't get the value. I probably should just delete them because I really don't, you know what I mean? There's just too much negativity.
And there are some good ones. There are some good ones that just, try to get help, but just remember the online stuff people are posting because they like the anonymity. And even if they have their name on there, they're still behind a screen, they're behind a keyboard.
Yeah.
So take everything with a grain of salt. Go to an event, a live event, talk to people who are really successful, check their businesses out, see if they're legit.
Yeah. Well, subject yourself. When we were talking managed service providers today, but even just a few weeks ago, I mentioned Vegas. I was at a video creator event, and I guess surrounding myself with others doing, right?
Yep.
Total different industry. And learning from others. And, once again, for me, Mark the typical introvert, right? I put myself out there, right? I made it a point to meet people, to connect with people. And if you paid attention to my social feed, you see where I took a bunch of pictures of people and their badges, right? As I'm meeting people and having conversations, or sitting down at the bar because I'm by myself to have dinner and, talking to the person beside me, making that connection.
Yep.
Life's short. Make the most of it, right? Get out there, do the things, meet the people, give back. And that's good. That's where I'm at in my journey in life right now. What's the next step for Ken? As we get ready to bring this home, what's in the future for Ken?
Well, first I was going to just do a quick story, Mark, of what you just said.
Sure. Go right ahead. Yeah.
A quick, if you talk to people, things can happen.
Okay.
So I went to the first Super Bowl, the first Patriots Super Bowl that they won. So Super Bowl 36 in New Orleans. And I had no way home because we just went there on a whim, and we got there and we had no way to get home. And I literally talked myself onto a flight. It was real quick. I witnessed the girl at the ticket counter get berated by the guy before me. The guy just completely berated her because he had no flight, no way out of there, blah, blah, blah. So he blasts off on this girl. So me, being me, learning some of these techniques, I walk up and go, oh, man, that was awful. I'm so sorry. I can't believe that he did that to you. Like, I don't even want to ask you for help right now. I feel like you got completely destroyed there by that guy. She's like, no, I appreciate it. I'm like, I'm just I got to get home to my kids, and but I'm not going to do that. If you can't help me, I understand. It's just, she's like, no, hold on. Let me see. So I talk to her, I sweet talk her, I walk away. About 10 minutes later, I hear, Ken Patterson, come to the counter. I'm like, Walk up to the counter, and she literally looks at that guy and hands me the ticket. Hands me the ticket. So now I get on the plane, and I'm feeling it now. I'm like, damn, that was pretty good. I get on the plane. I'm sitting next to this guy who says Patriots suck. They got lucky. He was actually from like a magazine or something. Forget what it was. And he's ripping the Patriots. And I'm like, hey, man, let me enjoy my glow here. We've sucked for so long. Like, just give me like a break. And then the other guy across from us says, yeah, Tom's going to be signing autographs at my place next week. And, of course, I reverse him. I'm like, no, he's not. He's like, no, he is. I'm like, I don't believe you. The guy's like, no, seriously. I'm like, yeah, whatever. I'm like, he's like, I'll send you something. I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. I give him my business card. Now, think about this. I'm just saying, if you don't ask, if you don't ASK, you don't GET. So here's what I did. I reversed it. I gave him my business card, had the conversation. If I just sat there and kept my mouth closed, nothing would have happened. I figure he's going to send me a piece of paper with Tom Brady's autograph on it. Hold on. I think I got it right here. Hold on. I do. Hold on. Oh, sorry. I just showed you my butt.
Hey, at least you had pants on, Ken.
Yep. Look at that.
Hey, fantastic.
So, and I got the COA with it, the whole thing.
No doubt.
It came in a box to my office because I gave him my business card. And my partner goes, what the hell is that? I'm like, I don't know. It's kind of big. I thought it was going to be a piece of paper or something. Opened it up, and that helmet was in there in a plastic case with the COA, and boom.
Yes.
The moral of the story is talk to people.
Yes.
Ask questions. You never know who's sitting next to you. You never know what they do or how they do it, and never expect anything. I didn't expect this. I just asked the question and put it out there, and it came, right? So if you do things for people and talk to people without any expectations, good things can happen. So I have a few stories like that where I've done interesting things. And by the way, I'm not as extroverted as people think. I get very anxious in large crowds. When I used to go on business trips, I never went out with people. I used to stay in my room. I used to do things on my own. My wife, again, same person who pushed me into going back to school, I was on a phone with her one time, and she said, you got to get out. Go do something. And that was the beginning of me being at bars and hanging out with people. And now I'm like the guy that does that all the time.
Well, and it is a good time, Ken. I mean, I must say, I can speak from experience in Lafayette. So
how could you talk about magical? I had two groups of people who said, there's no way we're doing karaoke. And the next thing you know, I had you guys had a sing off.
That's
both
very
groups
true.
singing off against each other. That's
actually,
pretty
and
fun.
Everyone was on stage at one point during the night. So yeah,
that's what I'm saying. So I had you guys fully full battle of the groups in a karaoke contest where you all said, there's no way.
Yeah.
What's
stuff.
next? I'd say next week, but this podcast will be out after it. But we're going to be doing an Ascend event, Taylor Business Group Ascend event in
Denver.
In Denver next week, which will already have passed by the time this gets released. Yep. The next thing's coming up. The big thing is the big at the end of the year, August. And we will be inviting people outside of our group. So Mark will be there and our members will be there, but also we are inviting MSPs from the outside world to just come and take a peek. So if you want to come to the big and check out our event, it's much more intimate. We do not have 100 vendors there. We only allow 30 vendors to come. So it's not this big giant vendor fest of people trying to prey on you. Right. And then also we make sure the vendors that come are doing thought leadership and not really pitching. And we have some great sessions. By the way, when we say our business is run by our MSPs for our MSPs, it's true. We have a group that actually plans the big out. There's a team of them that talks about the content, picks the people. It's not Taylor Business Group doing any of that. So you're going to see stuff that's made for you by people like you. So if you want to come out, you can contact me. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. Or you can email me at ken@taylorbusinessgroup.com and I'll help you get there.
Wonderful, Ken. And we'll make sure we put that information in the descriptions and so they can reach out and make it easy. Well, sir, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you sharing your story, your insights, and I look forward to just seeing you in just a few days, actually. And
yes.
And then
Yes,
later
we'll see
this
each
year
other.
at the Big.
We'll see each other at Ascend, and then the meeting, and then we got the big at the end of the year.
All right.
All right, Mark.
See you
Great
soon.
chatting with you, my friend.
You as well.
And like I said, if you need anything, reach out. But I'll see you next week.
Appreciate that.
I'll talk to you.
Bye.